Hello, heart buddies. Welcome to Open Heart Surgery with Boots. I am your host, Boots Knighton, and thank you for coming and spending a slice of your day with me and my heart buddy, Bill Pollard. I'm excited to introduce Bill to you. He shares one of my defects, although his has been corrected. He too has had a bicuspid valve. He also has a crazy story with a stent. And I was so excited when he reached out to me because no valve journey is the same, and Bill's is so unique. And just a little bit about Bill. He's 61 years old. He comes to us from Chesapeake, Virginia, which is near where I grew up in Edenton, North Carolina. So I just always love hearing a Southern accent. And Bill, you're still at it. You're still working in commercial banking despite
Yep.
all of these challenges. And I also like to emphasize that we can be heart patients and go back to our lives and continue to thrive. So thank you so much for wanting to share your story with all of us today.
Thanks, Boots. I think I saw you on some social media site, LinkedIn, Facebook, and I'm like, this is awesome. It's sharing heart stories, and I've been listening ever since. And even though I've been through it, you pick up new things, and we all have a story to share. So I'm glad we got connected. I've enjoyed listening to your podcast, and you're doing a great job connecting this community and helping people. Even if you don't know it or not, it makes a difference. So thanks for letting me share my story today.
Wow. Wow, thank you. Some days you really need to hear that, and that's today for me. So thank you. So yeah, I just gave the 50,000-foot view of your story, but if you could just take us into the thick of it. I mean,
I will.
you were at 50 years old, that's kind of when things kind of started to shift for you. You had made some lifestyle changes and take us from
Yeah.
there.
All right, and just if you need to stop me, just you know, please give me a break. But yeah, now before I turned 50, I was married, had a daughter, working. I was involved with Rotary, a service organization, and just uh, I was a athlete most of my life, and but I stopped doing that. And I put on a bunch of weight, and I wasn't taking care of myself. So in 2012, this is before the heart story, I did this boot camp with this group and a diet, and I lost 40 pounds in like 6 weeks.
That's
Uh,
incredible. That's
yeah,
just
and
incredible.
I was committed, and it was a strict diet, strict exercise program. So then I started, I felt great, so I started running a lot, exercising a lot, trying to eat better, and I'll hit that later, but that's always a struggle. That's my struggle for me. So I lost all this weight. I was in the best shape, in college. I was a soccer, played soccer in college, and so I was in pretty good shape then. But I was in the best shape since college. And in 2014, I was at some seminar, and a heart surgeon was speaking about heart health. And again, I'm in the best shape. I'm like, I don't know why I have to listen to this. Well, he talked about this heart scan or calcium scan, which I don't know, I'm sure you've got to know with this, but they do a scan of your heart. Takes less than an hour, and they tell you the probability of plaque buildup in your arteries. And at the time, insurance didn't cover it. It's usually like $100 here in Virginia. It was on sale for $50. And I'm thinking, I just turned 50. Yeah, I turned 50. And I'm saying my grandfather died at the age of 49 when my dad was 12 of a heart attack.
Mm.
And then my dad in his early 70s had bypass surgery and he had his valve replaced. And then my mom, in her 70s too, had a mild heart attack and had a stent put in. So I'm like, well, I got heart, and my cholesterol has always been high too. So I'm thinking, well, even though I'm in great shape, maybe it's worth the $50. I tell people I'm so tired, I probably wouldn't have paid $100 and had a heart attack. But I got this calcium scan. Didn't think anything about it. The nurse called me back a few days later and said, Mr. Pollard, we got your results back, and your calcium score is 1100, and we recommend you go see your cardiologist or family doctor. And I'm like, well, first of all, I don't have a cardiologist. And I said, so I Googled calcium score, and it said if you have a score of 400, there's a 90% chance you have plaque buildup in your arteries. Are you familiar with the calcium scan? Yeah.
Yes, yes, and
Yeah.
several other supporters of this podcast have had their scans too,
Yeah.
and that's how they caught their problems.
So I was 1100. So I had a former
That's
neighbor who's,
extraordinary.
yeah, I had a former neighbor who's a cardiologist, Dr. June Chung, and I called June. I said, hey, June, I just had a calcium score. It's 1100. He goes, why don't you come see me tomorrow? So I go see him, and he said, normally I would do a stress test, but something's going on. I want to do a catheterization. So they do a catheterization. This is in 2014, March or April 2014. That one, they went through my groin, so I had to stay in the hospital overnight. But he goes in there, and I was 80% blocking an artery. So he had to put three stents in where it was. So put the stents in. I went home the next day, and a week later I was running again, and everything felt fine. Now he did tell me, he said your aortic valve is getting a little bit calcified, so we got to keep an eye on that. But it's like no big deal.
Mhm, and what year was
So
this?
this is in 2014.
Yep, mhm.
So I had the calcium scan, had the stents, felt great. I think from 2014 to 2017, I ran 3 half marathons and a full marathon. I joined in 2016. I joined this group called Fitness Fellowship and Faith. My nickname's F3, and it's a men's outdoor workout group. So since 2016, 4 to 5 days a week, I'm up early in the morning doing workouts with other guys. So I'm doing a lot of cardio, boot camp style workouts, and I'll come back to that in a little bit. So even though I might not be eating that great, I'm exercising, I feel pretty good. So in 2017, and I remember I had no symptoms. I did this because of my family history. In 2017, when I was running, I was having to stop every few minutes. I just, I was losing my breath a little bit. So I went to call my cardiologist, and he said, "Yeah, let's do a stress test." Did a stress test, and he didn't like what he saw. He goes, "I want to do another catheterization." So this is probably like in May of 2017. We go in, and I was 90% blocked in another artery. So he put another stent in. And he also said, your aortic valve is getting a little more calcified. Let's keep an eye on that. So that's 2017. Went back, I was running. That time they went through my arm, so I was home, the same day. I was still running, doing F3, exercising, living my life, not really thinking too much about it. And then in 2018, it got to I was started having to catch my breath. And it got to the point probably around in the early summer, I couldn't run, and I'm not very fast. I just, run a nice, easy pace. I'd have to stop every minute to catch my breath. And I just had the
That's not
stent put in
normal.
less than a year. No, and I'm like,
Yeah,
this is not
not
good.
good.
So I called. So I was at the YMCA in August, and they asked me to play in a game of basketball, and I ran up the court fast 3 or 4 times, and I thought I was having a heart attack. I could not breathe. I had to lay down. Finally caught my breath. I called my cardiologist, and I'm like, June, something's not right. So we did another stress test, and then we did another catheterization, and he said the valves, your arteries are fine. He goes, but your aortic valve's gone downhill rapidly. And we never knew this before, he goes, and also you have a bicuspid valve, which, and I don't know if you want to explain what bicuspid valve is.
Yeah, so it's crazy. So our aortic valve should look like it should have 3 leaflets that
Mhm.
look like a Mercedes-Benz sign. As they
Right.
open and close, it looks, like it traces a Mercedes-Benz sign, but you and I only have 2 leaflets. And so it just opens and closes like, just like I don't know how you would describe that. But anyway, it, as you can imagine, having 2 leaflets is not as ideal. 3 is a little more efficient, and can withstand a full lifetime better than 2 leaflets, is how I understand it in my brain.
Perfect. Yep.
Mhm.
And so when you have a bicuspid, and I think 2% of the population has a bicuspid valve. So
Yep.
you can live
Yep.
your whole life and not even know you have a bicuspid valve. And I
Mhm.
didn't know, and I was, active my whole life. But, June told me when your bicuspid, when it starts getting calcified and going bad, it expedites that process.
Oh, yeah. Yep.
So he
It's like a
said,
negative feedback loop.
right.
Yep.
So he said, well, you probably haven't had this replaced in the next few months. So I met, now at this point I'm getting, now this is open heart surgery, so it's a different ball game now.
Oh, yeah.
And so this time I'm 55, and my daughter's probably 10th grade, maybe. And so I've met with in Hampton Roads, we have some good heart facilities, like 2 or 3 choices. And there's one that's probably more well known or has a better reputation. So I first met with this doctor in a local hospital. He was like a one-man crew doctor at this heart center, and it's called Maryview Bon Secours Hospital. So I met with him, and I was lined up to meet with the head heart surgeon at Centera Hospital, which is the bigger, tons of doctors, better, I don't say better reputation, more well known. Well, I met with Dr. Robert Lancy, and I mean, I really liked the guy. He was a runner too, from Boston, been down here running this heart center. Like he was the only doctor in it, and re-hit it off. And the other doctor I was going to meet with was good friends with him, and I just told my wife, I'm like, you know what? I like this guy. It's 10 minutes from my house. If I go meet the other guy, I'm going to like him, and I'm going to have to stress over that. So I'm going with Dr. Lancy. So he told me, he goes, the issue is, Bill, your valve's not very good. We cannot wait. This is September. He goes, we need to do this in the next few weeks. He
Oh my
goes,
gosh.
he goes, I'm surprised you don't get tired walking up the stairs. I'm surprised you. And I'm like, Doc, I only get tired when I run. And maybe he goes, well, you probably, over all these years, you've built up to it, from all the running and stuff you're doing. So we lined it up for October 15th. And, at that point, reality sits in. You meeting with the doctor, doing the research, what he's going to do. And, I'm not going to this because you've gone to this plenty of times, but, they're going to cut me open. They're going to hook me up to a heart-lung machine, and it's going to be at least 4, maybe 7 hours. And, you just hope, you hope you're in good hands with a talented doctor. You hope the good Lord is over. I'm a Christian, so I'm hoping He's looking after me. And so I got to that point, and the day I remember we had to be there at 6:00. Surgery's at 7, and they took me in. I was with my wife. Some buddies met me beforehand and had a little prayer time. Before we went in. I remember the lady came in, a wonderful nurse, getting me ready, shaving and whatever she needs to do. And then the anesthesiologist comes in, hooks me up. And I remember going into the operating room, it was freezing. I remember it was
Oh,
cold
yeah. It's so
going in there.
cold.
And then he says, count to 10. And the next thing is I'm waking up with tubes out of my chest, wires all out of my neck. And I can't explain. First of all, I was grateful I made it, but it felt like it was like 1 minute when I went into the emergency rooms. The last thing I remember, now I'm waking up, and it feels like I've been, hit by a bus. A
Oh,
good
yeah.
friend of mine's a doctor, and he said, that's probably one of the most dramatic surgeries you can go through. So
Easily.
my wife, I saw her. They brought her in. When I woke up, they'd already taken my breathing tube out, which was nice. But that first night, I want to give tell it like it is. It was tough. I mean, it was because they had to wake me up every hour to take tests and everything, but they couldn't put fluid in me. So all I could do was suck on these, ice chips. It was just, and you're on, the pain, the pain's more intense, even though they put me on medication. But the next day, they had me walking 3 times in the hospital. When I say walking, it's not very far and very slow. I have the oxygen machine, but they had me walking, and every day I felt a little bit stronger. I mean,
Isn't that
don't
amazing
get me
how
wrong.
fast you come
Oh
back?
yeah,
You think you're gonna be down forever, but it's really extraordinary how fast the body is like, "Oh, no, we got this. We're gonna be fine."
yeah. And the doctor, came in, and by going to this hospital, they didn't have a lot of patients that week, so they kept me in intensive care the whole time just because they had the room. So I was really being taken care of. Dr. Lancey would come visit me, and he told me, he said it was one of the worst valves he's ever taken out of someone.
Did you get
And
to
they
see
put
it?
in, what's that?
Did they keep it for you?
Now I wish they would have. And a lot of things I wish I would have done. Like I wish I would have gotten them to take pictures of my chest open. I've seen people do that, but
Mhm.
I thought it'd been pretty cool. But they put in a bovine valve. He asked me, do you want a mechanical valve or a bovine valve? I'm like, Doc, I need your guidance on this. I don't know. But since I'm so active, I didn't want to take the Coumadin with the mechanical valve, and I didn't want to worry about bleeding as much, even though I'm on blood thinner. I've been on blood thinner since I had the stents put in, so I still got it. I bruise easy. I bleed easy. So I went on the bovine valve, and I mean that could last 20 years, or could last 10 years. We just don't know. So at some point, it's going to have to be replaced. But my Dr. Lancey told me, you know, with the way technology is changing so much, hopefully when you get to that point, you can do TAVR, and I know you've probably gone over TAVR, where they can replace your valve without cutting open your chest.
Mhm.
So, it is what it is. I just know at some point, if I'm still around, this valve's going to have to be replaced. So, on day 5, I kept feeling better, and on day 5, I went home. They had me walking every day. Went home. I stayed home from work for 6 weeks. They didn't want me. I couldn't drive a car. We purchased we rented a medical recliner because he didn't want me going up the steps. So I stayed in recliner, and my wife and daughter and my mom was living at the time. She lived about an hour away. They just took care of me. I didn't go through cardiac rehab. Dr. Lancey said, you really don't. I don't think you need to go through cardiac rehab. But they had a nurse and therapist come in and do some exercises with me the first 2 weeks. And those exercises were as simple as, like, moving your arms up or squatting, and just wore you out, and you had to take a nap afterwards. So, I went off the heavy pain medication like a day after I came home. And I was on Tylenol, and I probably went off Tylenol probably 10 days. I was no longer on any pain medication. I was on a bunch of, I was on blood thinner or some other stuff, uh, but I was blessed to have a strong recovery, and I was walking every day. I think after 30, if you're, well, probably other heart patients can remember these key dates. 13 days after surgery, I walked a mile and a half outside. This was in November, and we can have nice weather in Virginia in November. And then, so 34 days, it was a really nice day. And I was at the point I could go by myself. I told my wife I'm going to go. She was busy. I'm going to go walk. So I put on a pair of running shorts, and I didn't tell her, and I didn't tell Dr. Lancey, and I ran 2 miles, 34
Wow.
days after surgery. And I mean, it wasn't fast. I'm not fast anyway. So I ran 2 miles. When I came home, I mean, I started bawling, because I figured I'm going to cry now. I knew I could continue on, and the surgery had worked. I told my wife, and she's like, "You think that's really smart thing to do?" And when I met with my doctor a few days later, I told him, and he said, "That's great." 41 days, I think I ran 6 miles, and it got to the point I'm back exercising again. I got a limit, I had to wait about 90 days before doing any heavy chest stuff because, I have this big scar and they want to tear the sternum. But probably after 90 days, I'm back to regular life. But,
That's
it's emotions. I can't
incredible.
explain. It's even to this day, I can't explain the emotions of going through that experience because, you don't know what's going to happen. You're grateful with, your doctors, the nurses, your family, your friends. I had friends come over, bring us dinner. The first 2 weeks, my wife, if she had to go do an errand, a friend would come over and babysit me, make sure someone was there. Just support network you have. 5 months, I'm looking at some keystones. 5 months after surgery in this F3 fitness group I'm in, we do these things called grow rucks where we go on a overnight 14-hour, about a 15, 18-mile ruck with a backpack carrying a 30-pound plate and water, and so probably about 40 pounds. So I did this 5 months after surgery, and I didn't know how tough it was going to be, and I definitely didn't tell my doctor and wife what I was getting myself into, and it was hard. And I was with 40 guys overnight. It was cold, walking, carrying a 40-pound backpack and other stuff, and they were worried about me. But when I finished that too, I'm like, if I can stand that, I'm going to be okay. So, that's, it's 6 years later, and life's good. I continue to do my F3 group. I continue to run. I see my doctor, cardiologist 2 times a year. You get paranoid sometimes, like, is something going on, or you get out of breath? Is everything okay? But for me, I wouldn't want to go through it again. But I sort of look back and like, it's also sort of a pretty neat experience to go through now that you've gone through it. And my mission in life has been to share my story, because there's probably, if I can just help one person realize they have heart issues and help them, then I don't care how many times I talk about this on my Facebook page, on LinkedIn, or tell the story, because someone has to hear it. And I've had several people, contact me and said, "Hey, I got a calcium scan and I'm okay," or "I got a calcium scan, my score was a little bit high, and there's some stuff we need to do." My brother got
Yeah.
a calcium scan and his was 700, which was high, and he got a stent within the past year. The doctor sort of put it off, so he got a stent too. So the family history. And during this time, my father died 8 months before I had the surgery, so we didn't know I was having these problems. We knew we had the stents. And then my mom died probably 3 years after the surgery, and they were really close and a big part of my family. Uh, that's my story. One thing I want to bring up is I had a St. Jude. They have different valves you can put in. I had what's called a St. Jude trifecta GT tissue heart valve is what it's called. Well, I read an article about a year ago, and they took that valve off the market because they were having some problems with it. So I called my surgeon, and this was in the past year. I said, "Dr. Lancey, they've taken this valve off the market. I need to be worried about it." And he's like, "Well, we didn't give you that valve." And I'm like, "I'm pretty sure you did." Well, for about a 1 month period, the hospital had gone from another valve to this valve. And I got it. I haven't, I feel he says you should be fine, but that scared me a little bit that they've taken it off the market. So if anyone out there has a St. Jude trifecta GT tissue valve, and you've had any issues, it'd be good to know. But everything's going well.
Sounds
My
like
big
that's like a part for like a really fancy muscle car.
Yeah, that's right.
You are a force of nature, sir.
Mm. Well, I mean, I've been blessed. Uh, my biggest struggle, though, and I talked about this early, is just I got it. I go through spells, but I got a sweet tooth. I'm not a heavy. I'm gonna have a few beers a year. I'm not a big drinker. Uh, but I have a sweet tooth, and sometimes I snack too much, and uh, no matter how much you exercise, uh, if you don't eat healthy, it hurts, and especially with a heart issue now too. What you put in your body, I don't care if it's your valve or you know blocked arteries, it makes a difference, and that's something I struggle with every day. I go through my spells, so if I can share one message with anyone is, if you think you have issues, just make the sacrifice and do some research and eat healthy.
And you beat me to it. I was going to ask you, what's your burning piece of advice? And I definitely agree with that. And if I could be so bold as to recommend to everyone the nutrition series that I aired in October of 2024 with my cardiac dietitian, Michelle. And we did 5 episodes on
Yeah, listen
heart
to
health.
those. Yeah,
Yeah. And really helpful. And I have worked with Michelle one-on-one for since the spring now. And I too had a sweet tooth, Bill, and
yeah,
she really helped me kick that for what it's
yeah.
worth. And and it really does matter. It's sugar's so inflammatory, and that
Right.
goes right through our arteries, and that causes inflammation that then can promote plaque buildup. And so it's like, and I didn't know that till I started working with her. And so it's like this downhill effect. And so, that whole cliche of you are what you eat, it's a cliche for a reason because it's true. And being
I
from
can
the
do.
South, I was
Yeah.
raised on hush puppies and
Oh
peanut
yeah.
butter and jelly and fried everything, and all the vegetables are cooked to death. So I get it.
Yeah, I've been. I read. I'm unactive on. There's a bunch of heart valve and heart pages on Facebook and social media. Read those. And you read stories about it. Some people didn't go as well, and they've struggled, and uh, but just for the listeners, it's not. That's not always the case. It's it can be a blessing, and even though you don't want to go through this, I mean, I'm proud to be a heart warrior. I'm proud I went through that. I can share my story, and I want to show off my scar because I went through that, and it's just almost to know you have a second chance. And I don't know if that chance is going to be 10 more years. I'm 61, 20 more years, 30 more years, but it's going to be hopefully a few more years. So I'm just grateful for being able to have this podcast. I'm grateful for folks like you to have this community to share the story. So people can know no matter what heart surgery type it is, that there's another side that's can be rainbows and sunshine and good stuff.
I appreciate that so much. And that's a beautiful place to end. And yeah, it can be sunshine and rainbows. And the other thing that sticks out that you said is that it was a neat experience. It was hard and painful and scary, and it was also neat. And I can't agree more. And I this current chapter that I'm living in with you of post open heart surgery has been the most challenging yet the most wonderful chapter of my life so far. And I am gobsmacked that, I can even say that.
Yeah.
So thank you,
Well, keep
Bill, so
yeah
much.
keep doing what you're doing. I'll be listening.
Yes, sir. You got it.
Yeah.
Well, folks, you heard from Bill Pollard today from Chesapeake, Virginia. Thanks again. And if you haven't yet, be sure to follow this podcast. You can, some people call it subscribe. I don't want you to miss another episode. And if you have a minute today, be sure to leave a review. They actually really matter. And it does make a difference to this tiny podcast. So Go to the show notes. You can find more ways to support this podcast and get in touch with me. And until next time, remember that I love you. You do matter, and your heart is your best friend.